And so I think being a part of the Big Read is about being in that family. It's about all of those generations. And it's about wanting to be there, like KJ was saying, and feeling that joy together.
Hey there, Albion. Are you ready to discover the hidden gems of our community? I'm Cassidy Porter, your host and proud Albion resident. Join me on Brick by Brick, the podcast that celebrates the people, places, and stories that make Albion so special. Together, we'll explore the rich history of our town, from its manufacturing roots to its vibrant present. We'll chat with local leaders, volunteers, and small business owners to learn more about the incredible work they're doing to make Albion a better place. So whether you're a lifelong resident or just visiting, tune in to Brick by Brick, and let's discover the heart and soul of Albion, one story or brick at a time. Welcome back to the Brick by Brick podcast. I'm your host, Cassidy Porter, and today I'm joined by three amazing leaders of Albion's Big Read. I have KJ, Jess, and Nels. Albion's Big Read brings 8th through 10th grade Albion students, Albion College volunteers, Big Read staff, and the Albion community together around a common reading. The 8th through 10th grade Big Read leaders lead community book discussions within Albion throughout the month of October, and this year they are celebrating 10 years of the Big Read, which is awesome. Yes. Thank you all for joining me today, and thank you for being my first 3-person interview. As you all are nice and snug on the couch, but so the way that the podcast normally starts off is with you sharing your connections and story to Albion. So I'd love to hear from each of you your Albion story.
So I came to Albion College in 2020. Before that, I honestly have never heard of Albion before. Nobody from my high school went to Albion College, so I was kind of like a pioneer in that aspect. But I came to Albion. I'm an English education major, and so I was looking for ways to get integrated into the community. One of my best friends is from Albion, and so that was like a good link to figure out what was in Albion and how I could get involved in the community. And then I discovered the Big Read, and now I've been doing the Big Read for the last 3 years.
Wow, that's great.
So Nels and I came to Albion in 2005 when we started teaching in the English department at Albion College. And we moved to Albion and were in Albion for a long time, I think, before we became a part of Albion. Okay. And I think our becoming a part of Albion sort of started when our daughter, Emmy Lou, went to what was then Johnson's daycare, where we started to meet other people in the community, and then going to Caldwell in kindergarten, and then Harrington, and then the Albion Community School. So it was really, I think we began to have the kind of relationship that we have to Albion now when Emmy Lou entered the schools, and we became connected to a whole network of people like through those schools and in those schools.
Yeah. So I would Jess, she said that we started teaching in whatever year that was. Yeah. But like she started teaching. And I just followed her here. We were living in Ann Arbor. Yep. Okay. She got the job at Albion College, and I came to like take care of the kid. And then I got, but like, no, I mean, like,
in the best way possible.
That's right. Yeah. And then I got my job teaching there afterwards. And you also, I think an important moment for us of coming a part of the community was Lewis Chapel.
Oh, absolutely.
When we started attending Lewis Chapel, we just started to meet people and be around people that had been in Albion for a long time. And then that kind of like shared work and community was the thing that made us feel like we belonged here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
So then diving into the Big Read, what was really the motivation behind starting such an amazing program?
So I think the motivation to start the Big Read started in Harrington. So the amazing Nancy Lewis, ran the Destination Imagination teams at Harrington. Yep. And when Emmy Lou was in 4th grade, she asked if I would be willing to manage the 4th grade Destination Imagination team, which Kendall Lewis was also on. And so were Tatiana and Fred Stewart.
Okay.
And so I started working with these kids at Harrington. And at this point, it's like, that's 2013, which is also the year that the high school closed. And so I'm having this experience with these kids at Harrington who I love. And my loving those kids changed my relationship to Harrington, and it changed my relationship to the entire school system. So the school system stopped being a system that Emmylou was in, and it started being a system that all of these kids who I loved were in. And I had I so loved having the opportunity to be with these amazing, amazing young people. And I thought to myself, like, how can I create an opportunity, I'm sure, like, for myself to be able to continue to work with young people, but also for other people to get to experience how amazing these young people were. And I then had the opportunity to teach a professional writing class at the college. And I designed this like project-based grant proposal for the NEA, which was the first grant. Actually, the YAC grant was the first grant we got to support the Big Read, and then the NEA was the big money that made that possible. So the motivation to start the Big Read was always about creating spaces in which people could bear witness to and participate in the beauty and strength and power of the young people in Albion. And then we gathered together a group of amazing people, Viola Dunklin, Harry Bonner, Kim Arndt, Keena Williams, a bunch of people, and we said, like, can we build a thing for these young people together? Or actually we said, like, I said, do you think we could bring a book program here? And we said, like, yes. And we said, like, what is a thing that people in Albion share? And we thought, like, it is a passion for young people in this community. And then we said, like, okay, well, what if the goal of the community then became to empower, or the goal of the program became to empower these young people? And then we're like, well, that would be cool. And then we thought, oh, what if we all read a book together and then they led book discussions? We're like, oh, that sounds kind of awesome. And so then we,
crazy.
Right.
I was like that. Yeah. She came to me and said, I want to do this thing. It's going to be like this month. All these people are going to do this. And then these youth are going to like lead book discussions. I'm just like, no, you're not. One, that won't work. You can't do it. Don't do this. And then she's like, did it anyway. And then it worked. It was like, I was a skeptic and I became a believer. But like, I didn't, it just it sounded too idealistic and too much work. And then like, it was amazing.
Yeah. So what does it really mean then to be a part of the Big Read, even for you individually?
I would say being a part of the Big Read is just like being a part of a family. So like we say Big Read family, and it means like everybody has each other's backs. We're all looking out for each other. We all are trying to lift each other up and like make each other feel good, because it's not easy to feel good in the world like nowadays. And so being able to have a space, right? Being able to have a space where everybody is just like excited to be there, happy to be there, wants to be there, is willing to put all of themselves into this program. It's just like an experience that's really hard to put into words. And
Yeah. I think it's about, I think part of being in Albion's Big Read too is, and I think this is embedded in what KJ said in the idea of family, is it's also about being a part of like a cross-generational group of people, right? So we've got folks who have been in Albion for like 50 plus years who are in discussions being led by young people who are in middle or high school, whose like older siblings or cousins are now in their 20s who were also in the Big Read, and whose siblings and cousins are at Harrington who are now like reading like as a part of like Albion's Little Big Read, right? And then Nels and I get to have this amazing experience where we get to meet young people when they're in 8th grade, or like through the Little Big Read, even when they're younger than that. And we get to work with them when they're in middle and high school. And then some of them come to Albion College, and we get to work with them when they're in college. And then they become a part of the program as college volunteers. And it's just like, what a gift. Like who who gets to spend time reading books and talking about those books with people when they're 13, like, and when they're 22, right? Like, that's a really amazing thing. And also to get to have that relationship, with them in the context of the big read, and then to get to be in classrooms with them at Albion College, it is a singular joy for us in the program. And so I think being a part of the big read is about being in that family. It's about all of those generations, and it's about wanting to be there, like KJ was saying, and feeling that joy together.
I think it also just means being touched by the feeling of it. So like the big read class, the big read in some sense is like these 20 some odd young people like every year, and then those of us who are like doing the work to bring that community together. But then that net gets cast really wide, and so I think being a part of the big read means being touched by the joy of the big read. So I just think if people have felt, I think people in this town like feel certain ways about the big read because they just get that it's joyful and good for young people. And like when you see the young people having a good time, or you see them leading these discussions, and they're like just doing these amazing things, or they just pick up a book, or they see the sign in a yard, makes them feel some kind of way, which is like just kind of good. I mean, I think that big would make people feel good, and that goodness gets spread out. And I think it just touches lots of people in ways it's just sweet and no sour. Like there's nothing. No one ever says anything bad about the big read, right? Like it's just like saying something, because I just think, what is not to like about young people having fun reading books?
Reading books.
Right? Yeah. And I think for me, even as someone who was a part of it and then now experiencing it like as a community member, there's something just so genuine about the program that like that's why there's nothing like truly negative that comes out, because it feels authentic. It doesn't feel like something that's just there so it's there. It's there because you care. So it creates a different layer from all perspectives. So then thinking a little bit more of like, as a current big read leader, what does it look like for them to participate? Like what's like required for them to be a part of it and those types of things?
So, I mean, I think like I can speak to the sort of to the nuts and bolts of what's required, right? So like one thing we do is we say like every kid who gets nominated to be a part of the big read must be a resident of Albion when they're nominated, and they must be students in the Marshall Public School system, since that's like that's Albion's district. And from the beginning, actually, the big read was we imagined it to be a program that was supporting our district. I had grand visions that like the big read was going to like save Albion Public Schools. Like everyone would want to come back. And so that's the reason why we pull the kids from the Marshall Public Schools. But once you're in the program, then you're in the program. So if a student goes to Concord for high school after they've gone to Marshall for middle school, like totally fine. Still in the program. So we then work with the teachers and principals at Marshall Middle School and Marshall High School to nominate kids in the program. We then talk to those kids over like a course of months between February and June until the kids all come and they say like, yes, we want to do this program. And doing the program in the most basic sense means I commit to coming to at least 4 of 6 Wednesday meetings that are an hour and a half long in June and July. And I commit to coming to a camp that will take place in August, where I'll spend 5 hours of my day, or like 7 if you're counting the van hours also, with Albion's Big Read. And I commit to read the book, and I commit to the possibility of enjoying it and enjoying talking about it. So I think those are some of the sort of basic things that kids commit to when they commit to the program.
So what really like takes place then on those Wednesday meetings?
We eat a lot of good food. Jess makes some great food that we all eat. We play a lot of games, whether they're like games having to do with the book, whether they're games not having to do with the book. The games not having to do with the book are really just to like get the kids comfortable in the space and like get everybody moving, excited about what's going to happen throughout the meetings. We just like enjoy each other's company. Honestly, we make connections with each other. We all like have played jokes, or not play jokes, like crack jokes with each other, throw balls at each other, throw hula hoops at each other, do headstands, like just a bunch. It's like controlled chaos is honestly what the Big Read Room looks like on a Wednesday.
So I'm at this, I think from our point of view, what we're doing is like using our imagination and creativity to create these experiences that feel strange, weird, but like magnetic to the readers, because they're like, they're in a college classroom, right? But we make it look and feel not like any classroom they've been into, but like some sort of weird circus party concert, right? And so they're disoriented in terms of the things they think they've been trained to feel in educational spaces, which are often like really antiseptic, straight lines, shut up, don't talk, listen to some grown up tell you things. So we turn that on its head. We invent weird stuff for them to do. The result of which is that they are like having fun together, and they are thinking thoughts and sharing those thoughts that in some way have to do with their own lives and a book. So in the end, the thing that we say is like the Big Read is not school. So we get to do education in the Big Read way, which in some ways feels, to some of them, like an antidote to some of their experiences in school. It gives them, it just allows them to like be around people talking about ideas and books in a way that feels exciting and joyful and weird, in the best possible way. So,
So then, KJ, I have a question for you. As the new assistant director, what about the program made you want to step into that role?
Honestly, just like the joy, the Big Read love, like everything about the Big Read, it's like makes me feel good doing it, and so I could step up and bring joy to the kids while also like being fulfilled myself, if that makes sense. Like I realized that I could like play a part in making the space for the kids, and like as a future educator, this is also like giving me things in my back pocket that I know now, like a little bit more in depth on how to do these things, and so I can do it for the kids in Albion, and then I can do it for my future kids as well.
That's great. That's great. So then I know a different like facet of the program itself is college volunteers. So what is it to be a college volunteer in those means?
You show up and you give your all to the kids, and you feel the love back for them, and that's what makes the volunteering worth it. Like the kids appreciate you being there, and you can feel in the room when you're not there that they like miss out on you being there. And so it's really the connections you build with the kids is what I feel brings college volunteers back every year. It's like you being able to play a part in like bettering the community for the youth is really what I would say brings the college volunteers back every year.
And I would say too that like the thing we love to say about the Big Read is like we create a context of joy in which the kids get to experience reading and themselves and one another. And I think like the CVs are the primary joy makers. And they make joy like with their honesty, with their authenticity, with their willingness to be goofy, with their deep investment in building authentic relationships with the young people in the room. I just think that they are the people who make the space by making relationships with the kids. And then everything stands on the foundation of those relationships, which I think is super important.
I think that I think the feeling is the thing that makes them move towards. And I think a thing that they receive is a kind of real world understanding of like how community service works. So if there's basically like when you build a program like this, like you're building it, and then there's all this stuff that happens, and then the leaders experience that thing, but they don't see what happens on the other side of the curtain where all the creation happens. Like they just, it's like as if it's just like it just appears before them. And that's the way it's supposed to feel for them. But the CVs come into this other side of the curtain and they kind of see the machinery behind this. And they're like doing the work. They just do a ton of work.
They do a ton of work.
Physical work and emotional work. So that these young folks can have a certain experience. And so much of community service is hidden, unseen, unacknowledged, right? And I just think, and I just think they see how it really works, and they learn in that way. And I think that they come to value like community building in a different kind of way. And they're all just sort of like they're self-selecting like into this program. These are people who want to do this kind of thing. And they want it to work. Right. So I just think it's kind of nice to be in a program that has a history of like doing its job. So you're going to do all of this work and it's going to pay off. Because those leaders are going to have the experience that we want them to have. And oftentimes they like over the course of the summer, these young people start to like give this love back to the CVs, which feels really good.
And I would just also say that one of the things that the CVs do is that they take that knowledge and those skills into classrooms at Albion College. So it's just like, it's a different thing to be in a classroom where you have CVs who are thinking about how communities get made. And they get made because people make them. And they get made because people learn one another's names and then they use them. And they get made because like people ask questions and lean in and model vulnerability and are willing to be goofy and are willing to laugh and to share the things that they value. And so to see CVs at work like in our classes is just, it makes a different kind of education possible at Albion College, which I just think is so valuable and amazing. And then you watch the other people in the class think like, oh, this is a possibility, or like, this is a way to be, like, I like how this feels. And then they become a part of making that community also. So, yeah.
So then Nels, switching gears to you a little bit. I know you previously said that like when the program was first like in creation mode, you were a little hesitant about it. So then at what point and what really brought you into being a part of the Big Read?
So, I mean, one, it's like just Jess's like belief in the thing, right? And so, I mean, I just couldn't imagine that it could work. And then after and I was not, like, I didn't help out at all in the first year, I don't think. I mean, I wasn't like, no, but I would show up to things, but like we were not working in any kind of way. It was Jess and Maddie. And then at the end of that first year, you just think like, I was like, whoa, like this is really cool. That Mike thought that was like, this is really cool. She's doing this amazing thing. And I think even the second year, I was sort of like leaning in more. But like Jess wouldn't talk to me. We wouldn't like talk at home about what was actually happening. And then I think at the end of the second year, I started to become more like intellectually interested in how this thing works. And then we would just start to talk. And by the third year, so the year with True Grit, like at that point, like I was all in, and we would just, then suddenly it's a thing that we are thinking about and talking about at home. Like, so it's like suddenly you're creating a thing together. And so like and like this is how our house works kind of anyway. Like it's very little of what we do is just like, this is my thing, this is your thing. It's kind of like our thing. So in some ways if the Big Read was going to happen, I was always going to be involved at some point because like that's just how it works. But also I just was convinced. I was convinced of the value of the thing. I was convinced that it was like sort of a calling. Like there's a thing we should be doing in this town. And I just got to hang out with these young people, and I just became sort of like totally into them. They were just so fun and so quirky, and not the way like you walk. I see people walking around town in Albion, and like particularly like white people feel some kind of way about like crews of young black kids running around, right? And like, because we're trained by racism to think certain kinds of thoughts. And then we see these same kids like in the big read, and they're just like kids, you know what I mean? Like suddenly I think I was learning things about other human beings and becoming a better person, basically, by interacting with them in this way. And it's just basically like, I need to get me some of that. I mean, it's basically how like I was raised in a sort of evangelistic town and family. Like the way evangelism is supposed to work is that you're supposed to like act in a certain way, and other people are supposed to be like, ooh, you there's something you got. Like, what is that thing that you have, right? Like, I got some of that, and then you spread the good word or whatever. I think there is an element of that in the big read, which is like, people like why are these kids so happy in this program? Like, why? How does this work? How do you do this? Like, how are you that way with the CVs? Like, in the class, like, why are they this way? And the answer is like, well, the big read is the reason we're this way. And so like that, when someone has that kind of thing, you just like want some of it.
Yeah.
And I just think, I thought to myself, like, I need to get me some of this because it was so clearly good.
Yeah.
So looking over the 10-year span of the big read, what impacts have you been able to see on the leaders, on the community?
So, I mean, I think there are lots of different kinds of impacts. So one of the impacts is, I think, is a kind of college access, right? So you get kids on Albion College's campus where when they're 13 and they look around and they think like, maybe I've never been on Albion College's campus before, even though I've lived here my entire life and like generations of my family have lived here like through their whole lives. And like, this is a place that I associate with joy. Like, this is a place that I associate with my community. This is a place that is mine. And like, I will keep thinking about this place, right? And then it comes time for like, they're getting in high school, they're getting up in high school, and then the fellows program, I think, is like really important, which is also in its 10th year this year, right? And then the fellows program like gives high school students a way to be coming to Albion College, and then to be in those classrooms, those same classrooms sometimes that they were in when they were in the big read. But I also think that there are impacts. Like, I feel impacts when people say to me in April, so what's the big read book, right? And like, when is it available? So we've got like people who are like, we've got folks who are anticipating a book that they anticipate enjoying reading. So like, that seems really great. And then, but we also have, we have folks who are saying like, I know this thing is coming, and like, I want to be sure I get the book to my granddaughter. I want to be sure that I get the book to my cousin, or I want to be sure that I get the book to my friend who does X or Y. And like, that feels like an important impact as well. And I think that, and I also think that I feel the impact of the program when every year during the scavenger hunt, when we call our veteran leaders and we say, come back, and they come back. And like last year we had multiple family members come back. And like that, like seeing that, so we've got like D Jones there, and then his brother Zay comes back, and like his cousin Taji is there, and Jacoby is there, and we're all there in this space together that like Taji and Fred were part of the inspiration for like all those years ago. But like the impact, I think also, I mean, I guess I like to think is in the love that brings those people back to the program that I hope and believe, I think that they carry inside them even when they're not coming back. So I think that also is a part of the impact of the program. And we also now, I mean, we have kids yesterday. So this year, there's a student in the program who said, when we were talking last week about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Little Bobby Hutton and the Black Panthers, and one of the leaders in the program, who is now in her 3rd year, which means she's getting ready to go into 10th grade, said, Jess, didn't we meet Malcolm X's daughter at Harrington? And they did, because in 2018, when we read X, a novel, Ilyasa Shabazz came to Albion, and she went to Harrington and she spoke at Harrington. So like, here's a kid who was at Harrington, who I didn't know when she was at Harrington, who remembers meeting Malcolm X's daughter when she was at Harrington, when Ilyasa Shabazz was here because of the Big Read, saying in the context of a Big Read discussion, at least 5 and maybe more years long, right? Saying like, I remember this person, and now I'm thinking about that person in this context. So I think that's a part of the impact too, like actually being in the Big Read before you know you're in the Big Read, right? So like when Nels said like, being in the Big Read is about being touched by it. I think one of the impacts is the way that people are touched by it and they remember. And then when they're in it, they're like, oh, wait a minute. This thing happened all these years ago. That was really cool. And Malcolm X isn't just a historical figure to me. He's also the father of a person who I met and made me feel a particular way at my school. Like, and I just think that's super cool.
Yeah.
And going back to what Jess said about the intergenerational piece, I think one of the impacts is that the Big Read gives older folks the opportunity to like see the young people of Albion like doing a schoolish thing, right? Because like when our kids go someplace else to go to school, right, and that's a huge loss. Not just in some ways for those young people who have to like leave to go to school, but like for the people who are in this town who are like the parents or the grannies or the aunties or whatever, like they don't get to, they don't have the same kind of access. So like when the NAACP hosts a Big Read discussion and you have like all these sort of like old timer NAACP folk who come and like see these like 12-year-olds or whatever, like standing up in front of a space and like leading a discussion, they feel pride in Albion youth, which they know they know that they feel that thing, but they don't have as many opportunities to experience them. So I just think giving folks the chance to come and like bear witness to how cool these young people are is nice because they're just not. They're not always given the opportunity to do it.
And I guess I would also say, and this, I think this is a super important impact of the Big Read. Like we have had teachers come through the Big Read, right? Like KJ is going into a classroom to student teach all fall, and she takes with her like the experience in the Big Read, right? So like, Emily McCaleb has been teaching for years at Harrington, and she discovered that she was interested in young people in the context of the Big Read, right? Like Ian Lee is teaching at the Opportunity High School, right? And like he was in the Big Read, like Rich Anarat, like was teaching at Harrington and is now like the head track coach at Earlham, right? And he was in the Big Read. So I think part of it too is that like,
it's kind of a teacher training program.
Like,
does that sound right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And like something that I'm always like told is, oh my gosh, you can connect with all these different kids. You can connect with kids so well. You connect with every different type of student. And I truly believe that's because of the Big Read, because we have to, and it's not even a have to, it's you want to connect with all of the leaders in the program. And so you just get those skills in your back pocket of, okay, this is how I go about moving throughout this space. And so yeah, that's like definitely one of the benefits of like being able to connect with all the kids.
So then looking at how the program has changed over the 10 years. I mean, I was a part of the that very first class, and I know for a fact that it is different in all the best ways possible, you know? But like as program leaders, how has it changed?
So there are two key physical objects in my mind that capture ways that the Big Read has changed. So physical object number one, like, is the book itself, right? So in the first 3 years of the Big Read, we were applying to the National Endowment for the Arts for money that would support the program. And when you applied for that money, you had to pick the books off their list.
Okay.
And so we were teaching the books off that list that felt to us, that felt to the committee like we could connect it to our community and to our kids. And of course, those books were A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin.
Which is a good novel.
Which is a great novel, right?
But,
Fahrenheit 451, right? By Ray Bradbury. And Charles Portis's True Grit, right? All written by white people, all written by old people, right?
For adults.
For adults, absolutely. Except A Wizard of Earthsea. But it was like, it was in a different generation also of like YA novels. And then we decided we weren't going to go after the NEA money anymore. We didn't get it one year. We didn't get it in the True Grit year. And we were like, like, that's its own special story. And a story of community coming together in order to ensure that the program continued. But then like not getting the money that year and realizing that we didn't need the money in order to make the program work, we thought, well, what happens if we stop applying for it and are free then to like pick books, any book that we want? And that was the year that we chose X, a novel by Kekla Magoon and Ilyasa Shabazz. And that was also the year where we just said, okay, like we understand a thing that's possible now. We don't need the NEA. We don't need the NEA's book list. We are going to read like books by people of color about people of color. And we're going to read books that are written for and about young people, that were like for young people and about young people. And so like that was a fundamental shift. It also meant we were teaching people who were alive and could travel. And so all of a sudden we could bring the writers in, right? So like when you read a book that Ilyasa Shabazz like wrote with Kekla Magoon, and then you meet Ilyasa Shabazz, and then you meet Kekla Magoon, like that's cool. And so I think that's a really important way that it's different. The other object is the chair. So when you were in the Big Read Youth Leadership Program, we had chairs in the Big Read room, right? And we would like
desks.
We had desks in the Big Read room, and we would like put the desks in a circle, the way you have a circle, right? And so like if you walked into that classroom, it looked like a classroom, and there were ways that it felt like a classroom. I think we did all kinds of like creative and crazy stuff in there, but we were doing creative and crazy stuff in a space that was recognizable as a classroom.
And you called those, when you did discussion, you called them like book work.
Book time. Yeah, right? Book work. We did book work, right? Except we did that until like the first day of book work in the second year, where it was like, that was a grim time. And so we abandoned that language. But in the third year of the program, we're in the Wednesday meetings, and it was not feeling good. It was like feeling like school. And so like we're in a debrief with the CVs. We're like, the community is not coming together, right? Like it feels super schooly. There's all this sort of like you feel like you're managing things in a way that felt like we were managing things in ways that didn't feel good. And we said like, so how can we change the dynamic? And so Emily Allison, who was a CV at the time, who graduated from Albion College, like around that time, said, what if we took all the desks out of the room? And so like we took all the desks out of the room. And we have never had desks in a Big Read room ever since that moment. And so what happens when you take all the desks out of the room is the thing that Nels was talking about earlier. Like all of a sudden people walk in and are like, what? Right?
What am I supposed to do?
What do I do now? Right? Yeah. Like I can't sit in the place where I always sat, right? Like I don't really like that I'm on the floor, but all of a sudden I can lie down now, and I kind of like that. And I kind of like if we're like lying down over here, and those people are like sitting up over there, and like now I'm going to sit up, and now I'm going to lie down, and like now we can throw balls across the room in a different sort of way, right? I think that was also the moment where we said, okay, if we take we've taken the literal chairs out. What are the figurative chairs that we take out of the Big Read now? And I think there was a way that play had been an important part of the Big Read Youth Leadership Program before that, but play became an organizing principle of everything that we did in the Big Read after that. And so I think that was super important.
So you said that we didn't need the NEA's money, but we did need somebody's money.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were just saying something about donors?
Absolutely. So we would not be able to exist without the individuals who have supported the program. So Barb Weiskettle has supported Albion's Big Read in ways that have enabled us to grow and to direct our energy at the young people instead of having to direct it at the young people and at securing funds over here. And she's not the only person who has given, and local organizations have supported it also. But Barb's particular generosity has really made it possible for us to grow in the particular ways that we've grown over the last 6 years. And I think I think that her love of Albion and her love and faith in Albion young people, like, is something that absolutely powers the Big Read, like, by way of her generosity. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also, like, I just want to give a shout out to the people who were in the program in those early years. Because I think, like, I was a believer and I was moved by love, but Maddie and I didn't know what we were doing yet. And I, like, when I wonder if, like, if the Big Read was meant to be, I remember that in that first year, like, you all read that hard, strange book, and then walked into, I think, what basically were like college classrooms, where I was doing like the things that I would do in college classes. And I think the thing that we got right that first year absolutely was the building of the relationships. But you all also brought really beautiful relationships that had been forged in other places, in other programs that were like in Albion. So I just, like, Albion's success would not have happened, like, if it weren't for like the Alpha Kappa Alpha like youth leadership programs that they were running at the time, or like it wouldn't have happened without the programs that Harry Bonner was running at the time. It wouldn't have happened without, like, the Mayor's Youth Council, right? It wouldn't have happened without Sisters Influencing Society, right? So there were all these programs that you all were a part of. And the Big Read just let you do a slightly different thing, but like, you brought in, like, all the love and all the skills and all the community that you had, and confidence that you'd built in those other places. And you were all just game. Like, you were willing to show up and, like, let us figure out what we were doing. And I remember on the first day of camp coming home and being like, Nels was like, how was it? And I was like, it was amazing. Like, and it was because you all were amazing and you were so generous. And I just think, like, without the generosity of that very first year, and without the generosity of the people who could and did come back in that next year, like, there would be no Big Read. Even with if all the other things had been in place, right? Like, there still would have been no Big Read except for the 12 of you that year.
Well, speaking as one of them as well, it was amazing. You know, like, I've heard that perspective from you quite a few times now, that, like, you felt like it was like, it did not feel that way. I don't think, from our side. Like, you know, I think we did have a special group of people, you know, like, when you come into something and you already have bonds with people, it's different. It really is. And, you know, like, the way that now it's a place for the Big Read to build those bonds is amazing. It really is, because having those opportunities is really, like, what allowed us and what allows other students to feel that confidence to go on and do the other things that they're able to do. Because all of the Big Read alumni, all of the Big Read people are doing amazing things.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, getting excited for this year in particular, what should we be looking forward to, like, for the Big Read kickoff? When is that going to end up being?
So that'll be on the 5th of October. Okay. Right. So it's on the 5th of October. I think you can expect, like, lots of things that people are familiar with and have anticipated. So you can expect a parade, right? You can expect face painters and circus performers. You can expect community organizations. You can expect a big tent, right? And good music, I think. You can expect to see, like, our leaders and our CVs like on that day. And then I think like the big things to expect that are in place already, like for the big read in October, are the kickoff on the 5th of October in Holland Park Westward. You can expect discussions led by our amazing young people. You can expect Step Africa to come and perform again. So they were here in 2019 and they blew the doors off of Washington Gardner. Amazing. So on the 17th of October at 7:30 in the Albion College Chapel, we'll be bringing Step Africa back. You can expect the celebration on the 28th of October at the Bohm Theater. You can also expect Rita Williams Garcia, who is the writer of this year's big read book, One Crazy Summer, to be at the celebration. And I have to say, Rita is basically like the matriarch of big read speakers. So she came in 2016 when we read Fahrenheit 451. So you've met her before. But when she came, nobody knew her, right? No one had read any of her books, right? And this year, but when we were on our way to the airport that year, and she was so wonderful when she came in 2016, but I said to Rita, like, Rita, who should I be paying attention to? Like, who are the writers I should pay attention to? And she said, you should pay attention to Kekla Magoon, Jason Reynolds. You should pay attention to Renee Watson. You should pay attention to E.B. Zaboy. And every one of those writers came over the next 4 years, right? So she is the reason why when the NEA money went away and we said, we're going to find different books to read, like she had given me direction in terms of those books and these beautiful people who we brought. So like, we're super excited to bring her back. I also think that people can expect like a beautiful and amazing book. So One Crazy Summer is our novel. It's about 3 sisters, the Gaither sisters, who in 1968 fly from Brooklyn to Oakland. They live with their father and grandmother in Brooklyn. They fly to Oakland to really like meet sort of and spend time with their mother, who left years ago. And when they get out there, they meet their mother, Cecile, who's a Black feminist poet, and she sends them down to the Black Panthers Community Center, where they like go and get breakfast, and then they like stay for the camp during the day, and they learn about themselves, and they learn about the world and the community, and they learn about the Black Panthers like through like what the Panthers would have called their survival programs. Like, so through the breakfast program, like through the education, and they're also like coming to understand sort of how the world functions that they live in. They develop different relationships with one another. They develop different relationships with their mother. I think it is a perfect novel. So I am really excited about reading it as a community. I'm really excited about the discussions that the kids will lead.
I really love to end the podcast with, what is your hope for the future of Albion? So looking at our community more broadly in terms of all of the different moving pieces that we have going on, what do you hope for?
I can start.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is just so impressive to me about Albion is like just like all of this, like these powerful, amazing people, like all between seemingly like the age of like 70 and 85, right? Like all of these people who make Albion what it is, like who've been charged at NAACP, who've done all this stuff, who came here from the South, worked at the Malibu, like all these folks who worked in this town and then retired and then stayed here and like just did awesome, amazing stuff. Like they've been doing it for a long time, right? And so like I just see like I'm deeply impressed and look up to this kind of like gray-haired generation of elders, right? I can't wait to see like when the people that we're in the big read now, like these young folks, like they have big shoes to fill of the people who make this town what it is, but they like they can fit into those shoes. And so like I'm interested to see like how this younger generation like moves in to this kind of other role of being the people that other people look to. So I just like, there is definitely to me a generational kind of thing in Albion where so much of the work gets done by these folks who are like retired and have been doing it for a long time, and they're probably tired too, right? And so like someone's got to take over. Who's that going to be? And I think it's going to be people like that we see coming up through the Big Read who just like have a certain skill set and believe in this place.
And to like kind of go off people who believe in this place, like as three of us who weren't born and raised in Albion, but like integrated ourselves into the community. Jess knows more than I, but like people who aren't from Albion, like getting involved in the community, because if you're willing to put in the work, you're gonna get that love reciprocated back to you. And just so people from the college or just people who come to Albion, seeing them integrate themselves in the community and like getting involved in such like a loving like place. It's Albion's an amazing community to be a part of. So seeing outside people come in and like building that also.
And I think that like, I feel so thankful for the programs in Albion that allow us as a community to bear witness to and participate in, like, the success and beauty of our young people. And so, like, I'm so thankful every year when we see the 4-H Creative and Expressive Arts kids perform. I'm really thankful that programs like Difference Makers exist and, like, being able to go and sort of see those kids at the end of their summer. And those are programs like the Big Read that people make and that people sustain. But I think like I'm excited by the possibility of there being more programs and different programs, right? And I think that that the more, and I'm excited for programs that exist now to figure out ways of inviting people to come in and to see and be a part of like what those kids are doing. And so I'm excited sort of as we move forward to have more and more opportunities to see Albion young people like showing us who they are, because they are amazing and powerful and they have such bigness inside them. And I think the more opportunities that we give them to show that those parts of themselves, like the more it will enrich us, because we will get to see and be a part of that, of the beauty that's in them. So I look forward to that. New generations of programs.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing the Big Read love. So
thanks, Cassie.
That's it for this episode of Brick by Brick. We'll be back with more stories from the heart of Albion. Until then, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep building Albion's future.